Welcome to Socializing Security, where every week we have a discussion about security, compliance, and beyond.
Our goal is to learn and grow by socializing each week's topic with each other, our guests, and with you.
A quick compliance note, this podcast is meant for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal or regulatory advice.
We're glad you've joined us, and we hope you'll learn along with us.
Welcome back to another episode of Socializing Security. Brian, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Milu. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I'm excited to dive into our topic today, which is talking about the adventures of a CISO. I think you and I have chatted recently about, do people say, is it CISO? Is it CISO? I personally think it's CISO, but...
I hear it every which way, but I would say the most common one I hear is CISO. So that's the one I have tended to adopt at this point. But, it's not on-premise versus on-premises, so I'm not going to be too picky about it.
Yeah, and it's Chief Information Security Officer is what we're talking about today, and we will be chatting with a guest in an upcoming episode about their adventures, specifically on the state regulatory side, which is, I think, a unique perspective that we're really looking forward to talking with this particular speaker and really getting some of their background about their career progression, as well as just advice that they have for other CISOs, as well as information security professionals in this space.
I've worked with several CISOs over the years, obviously, and it's always, when it comes to C-suite people, not to demean any other people in the C-suite, but the CISOs always, to me, seem to be kind of the most down to earth, the most kind of came up out of the trenches, if you will. So talking to them always is kind of the most comfortable C-suite person I've really spent time talking to on any regular basis, because they've been there. It's the one I probably have seen myself most likely to get into, though at this point I don't really see it happening myself, but always interested in hearing their perspectives. And I know that our guest this week is has a wide berth of experiences, so maybe you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we'll be chatting this week with Josh Kuntz. He's the Chief Information Security Officer at the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. He is a Marine that has an impressive background working with state government agencies in the state of Texas, working with quite a few different, regulatory agencies, from the Licensing and Regulation Department, Workforce Commission, Department of Motor Vehicles, the Juvenile Justice Department, as well as the Department of Public Safety. And so a large range of different types of data sets, as well as different security concerns, depending on the sensitivity of the information, as well as what that particular agency might be working on at that time. What I think is really impressive as well is just seeing this individual's background of starting as more of a network professional in that more really technical lens, and building out quite a large skill set and being able to build out information security programs for a state in the government sector, I think is pretty impressive. I had the pleasure of meeting Josh at a recent event in Austin, and actually ran into him twice, within a week, and managed to just chat with him and get to know a little bit more about his background, but also just the things that keeps him up at night. And I'm excited to just have a conversation with him about the evolution of his career as a CISO, as well as some of the things that he's been working on really in the space.
When you brought this one up to me, I was like, yeah, let's definitely get into the mind of a CISO, kind of understand what's the career path. How do they get there? What do they really focus on? How, I, as an individual within an organization he may run, how do I get his attention? How do I talk the language that a CISO needs to hear? How do I align my work day to day with their goals for the organization? I think it's important for everyone to kind of think through it in that perspective. What are they looking for on their team? What do they see the individual contributors in the lower levels of management to help produce the type of organization that they feel they need in order to create whatever value to the organization, to protect the organization that they're working with. So I think this conversation is going to be a lot of fun from that perspective. Obviously, the government perspective on it is going to be very interesting as well, because that's not a space I've worked in myself. I've worked with numerous kind of SLED spaces before. He's essentially spent his entire adult life in the government space. I don't know many people that have had that long of an experience in both the military and in the state, local government side of things as well.
Yeah, it definitely shows like a commitment to sticking with the industry and staying in it. And I'm sure he's managed to see a lot of different changes, especially with information security over the last 10 years, 15 years has changed rapidly. So even just understanding what that looks like for these organizations, especially in the state of Texas, where now there's different regulations that their third-party vendors are having to work with. For example, like in the state of Texas, they've adopted State Ramp, which is an information security standard that all of the third parties that they work with would have to comply with to be able to meet the agency requirements for Texas data. And so I'm sure managing that program and building that out alongside their vendors, I'm sure has been like an interesting challenge, as well as dealing with, a remote workforce during the pandemic. And I'm sure there's different challenges that Josh had experienced, specifically also just switching agencies. I think that's like a really interesting path as well of, working with one agency, building out their information security program, and then moving on and their priorities being totally different. And how do you build a team and how do you get that buy-in, I think is another thing we definitely want to talk to him about of, as an information security leader, so much of your skill set needs to be technical and you need to be understanding what's going on within the infrastructure and understanding the security practices that the team is building, but also making sure you're getting executive buy-in for the program and understanding, especially on like limited government budgets, right? Of making sure that you're spending the money in the right place and making sure the system is secure.
Those challenges are unique there, but a lot of the conversation I think is going to be applicable to everybody, because security is security. Like there's a special attention on those state, local government entities when it comes to security, because one, they have to do it usually with less budget than the average corporation is able to do it, while at the same time, ironically, having sometimes even more sensitive data because they are the ones that hold a lot of key critical information, particularly in the PII space. But really the challenges and how to deal with it is really the same anywhere. One of the things that you brought up that he has a passion for, and I think we definitely want to touch on, is the concept of mentoring. And to me, in any organization, that's important. And you see more and more companies rolling out more formal programs, trying to be very thoughtful about it, because having a mentor obviously helps you grow faster, helps you get to a point sooner. I think when we introduced you at the beginning of our podcast, that was a piece that you brought up as well, is that ability to have somebody that can say, here's how I got from your point to my point, and maybe we can help you get there even faster or more effectively. But also to really engender trust with upper management in his case. So being the leader, being in the C-suite and being able to reach down and say, hey, you're a senior level admin or a senior level security infrastructure person. What can we do to help you get to the next step? And that's always been a big thing for me, is sometimes you rise to the top of your individual contributor status and the only option you have is to go into management. And going into management is not right for everybody. And if they hit their head on a ceiling and they have nowhere else to go, well, then they're gonna find the door and they're gonna leave. And so, really excited to hear his thoughts about how he looks at taking his people, making sure they're happy, making sure they're getting what they want out of their career, and making sure that A, they stay with the organization, but B, continue to contribute at the top level that they possibly can.
Yeah, I think it was really refreshing. Just we met at a type of like mentorship event. And so it was really refreshing to get his perspective of, he has like a suite of individuals that he's been mentoring for sometimes months, sometimes years, whether they work with him or no longer. It's really interesting to see his passion, that he's really hoping to get more individuals involved in these types of STEM roles and making sure that they feel empowered to ask for help, especially if they're not sure what to do, whether that's for like a career transition or a different opportunity within a job. I've mainly worked for smaller companies where I don't think there's been enough of an emphasis on mentorship, because people have been honestly too busy to really, I think about it. Yeah. And I think a lot of team members are given opportunities because they needed to. And so I think those are things that are great for us to chat with Josh about and hear from his perspective on. I'm excited about it. I'm also just excited to be bringing on more speakers and learning from them as we're having these conversations, because, you and I have worked with CISOs, but talking with someone who's made a career out of it, I think is a unique opportunity that we get to do here on Socializing Security.
Yeah, and we want to try and talk to people at all levels of the organization. It's kind of cool that this early on in the podcast we're talking to somebody that sits at the top of their particular org.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So, hello, Josh. How are you?
Good afternoon.
And of course, we're joined here with our co-host Brian as well, and we're going to be chatting about Josh's background, specifically in state government, as well as the world of information security and where those two things kind of fall together, and getting some of his background on his leadership style, as well as some of the work that he's been doing and mentorship and the importance of that in the space. Brian and I spent a little bit of time already introducing Josh and making sure that we were spending a good amount of time just chatting about his background and what we were hoping to get out of today's conversation. So we definitely want to make sure we're spending more time chatting with Josh. So Josh, do you want to just give us a little bit of an introduction from yourself in your own words?
Sure. So I, right out of high school, went to Southwest Texas State University back when it was Southwest Texas State University. I say I attended for 2.5 years. I was not the most studious individual. I think I affectionately refer to that. I majored in beer and women, which was not conducive to a degree plan. After leaving there with about a year's worth of credit, I went to the Marine Corps, and where I got myself straightened out and got some discipline. I was an electronics technician there and served 6 years. When I got out, my father had worked for the state of Texas, and I followed in his footsteps and started with the Texas Department of Public Safety. And I ran their satellite system for the Texas law enforcement telecommunications system for a number of years, and then moved over into cybersecurity when the state was just starting to recognize that was a thing at the Texas Youth Commission. And then from there, the Texas Youth Commission joined with the Juvenile Probation Department to become the Juvenile Justice Department, and it helped make that transition with those two agencies. And then went over to the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles, which was a brand new agency. So we had to build a program from scratch there. And then it was made of a carve out from TxDOT. Basically, it was all of the customer service end of things: vehicle title registration, motor vehicle dealer, distributor, manufacturers, and the long haul truckers. So licensing and regulating those folks. And that was an interesting time. There was a new agency. We acted a lot like a startup. Every exception or new way of doing things, we would pivot quickly and do that. And so it was a very interesting time to help build a program and build an agency. And from there, I went to a very large agency, the Texas Workforce Commission, over 5,000 employees, very bureaucratic, structured. And I was able to, one thing I recognized right off the bat was that we were not placed well in the agency, and led an effort to get us moved from deep within IT out on our own under the chief operations officer, and successfully built that program out, expanded it, and the succession planning for that worked well. One of my deputies became the CISO when I left there to go to the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. So it's been an interesting, 29-year journey so far, and
Yeah.
And just it's given me perspective on a lot of different ways of doing things: small agencies, large agencies, well-established agencies, brand new agencies, agencies that act like they're new but are old, all kind of different things.
Yeah, that's a fascinating story. I think the thing that stood out most to me is working like a startup within a government organization. That sounds really, really intriguing to me, because government isn't normally a place where you think about startup and fast pace and testing something and failing fast and moving on to the next thing. So I'm really fascinated to maybe hear a bit more about that as well.
Absolutely. So at DMV, we were, like I said, we're a carve out from TxDOT, and those programs have been treated like the funnel the money comes in. We're the state, give me the money. Because basically all of that revenue that was generated from taxes and fees went to pay for road construction. But TxDOT, they're road construction. That's basically their fundamental core purpose is to build roads and bridges. They were not really interested in the customer service aspect of that funnel. And so the legislature split us off, and we still, moved the money that we collected, or most of it, into the fund that paid for roads and bridges, but we kept our portion of it in order to pay for the administration of the programs. And we really changed to a very, very customer focused mission. We went through an entire exercise in branding and mission and vision and goal setting to really be purposeful in how we built the agency, because we were building a brand new agency, and that's very rare in the state. Most of the time we're collapsing agencies, right? There's a small agency that's been around for 20 or 30 years. They're like, that's not really efficient. Let's merge that with something else. If it's health related, they'll merge it to the Health and Human Services, or if it's licensing related, it oftentimes comes to the Department of Licensing Regulation. But this was a new thing. This was building a whole new program, a whole new agency around this new concept of let's serve the customer. And so we did not have any preconceived notions about what that meant. You know what the law and the statute and the regulation says, but how you do it is completely up to the agency. And we took a very progressive approach in trying things. If they didn't work, we abandoned them and we moved on to other things. We upgraded projects. In the middle of that, we were the first large state to convert their title and reg system off of a mainframe. There'd been, I think, Wisconsin or Minnesota had done it before us, but we're talking about maybe 2 million registered vehicles versus the state of Texas. We're talking about 16 to 22 million, depending on how you're counting. So there's a huge difference and a massive undertaking, and we learned from other states' failures. California tried to do it twice before, and we said, okay, well, let's not do it that way. Let's try something different. And so we really did try to be innovative in making those shifts. If there was an exception to a rule, we would use it. If there was a way to move financing from one thing to another to make to address a need, we would do it. There was nothing off the table, and that was a really refreshing exercise in state government, because usually people are very entrenched in this is how we've always done it, and that was never allowed to be something we said in the agencies. We never go to this is how we've always done it, because how we've always done it is how we got here. How TxDOT always did it became the thing that got us, carved out and made a new agency. So that was not how we should do it. So we should do it better. And so we really embraced that and made that our mantra of how can we make this better. We had a motto. It was helping Texas grow, helping Texans go. So it was all about mobility and moving. So that we had it was catchy. We had our own color scheme. We had our own logo that we came up with. It was very, like I said, it was like a private company. Branding was important, and that helped me understand, because a lot of state agencies, they use the state seal and they put their name around it. Not very creative. This was a very different thing, and we came up with our own logo, our own something that conveyed motion. They actually engaged a marketing firm to help with that. That was where I really saw how state government could be more like the private sector, more like a startup. And that's why I said we would move quickly. And if something wasn't working, try something else. That was an allowed attitude within the organization, that it was allowed to say, that's just not working. Let's do something else. This is let's not spend any more time chasing that that failed process. And so that really made the agency nimble.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear it. It sounded very innovative in the sense that maybe a little bit different of some of the other positions that you had, right? But being able to be more flexible and adapt quickly is an exciting part of it, and a huge part of any successful cybersecurity program. I mean, if anything, we all have to think very quickly and be able to adapt and change rapidly, because otherwise we might get stuck behind. When you were thinking about, in that instance, you were really building a program from scratch. When you're joining a new agency or new organization, I know you had said some of the important parts were like the mission and values and making sure that everybody is bought in on what the goals are at a higher level. What are some of the other projects that you're thinking about when you're first joining an organization? Like, what are your first focus areas as a CISO of like level setting and being like, this is the program we're going to go build?
So the first thing, and you hit on a little bit, is the mission. If the organization has a clear mission, then you should be looking to tie your security program to that mission. And I use the same mission at every agency I've been at for the security program, and it is to enable the business to operate securely. That's not specific to any organization, any industry, any. It's not my job to say no. It's my job to make sure we enable, because unless I'm a security company, the business is not security. The business is something else. The security is to make sure we don't get owned, that we don't know. And I like to say this, my job is to keep us out of the paper, because you don't want to be in the paper for my kind of stuff. It's about trying to make the agency or the organization operate within the guardrails that keep you out of trouble. But I'm not here to stop things. I'm here to make sure that we actually accomplish the mission. So that's starting with that, and then from there, understanding what your organization's function is. If you're a manufacturer, you're building something, and the function is to build the thing that you sell. If you're a service organization, it's to perform services and whatever that is. Like with the state agency, what are you regulating? What industry are you involved in? And understand that. I see it as my job to understand the statutes and regulations, not just pertaining to security, but pertaining to the industry that I'm a security shop for. It's hard to protect the things you don't understand. So that's the first thing, is understand what you're doing, understand what your organization does, and then go one layer down. Okay, what security or regulatory frameworks apply to that? Okay, now what do I have to be compliant to? And then start looking at risk frameworks. What is it that we need to do to protect what we're doing and to make sure that we're not letting the malicious actors in? Are we handling money? Or do we have PII? Do we have health information? Do we have IRS information? Whatever that kind of information is, guides what are the things we need to do? How important is the data that we're dealing with? That's one of the conversations I always have with executives when we start looking at impact analysis and we get down to the area of disaster recovery and continuity planning. Down in that far right hand side of the continuum of cybersecurity. I start having the conversations about criticality. And everything, this is critical. Okay. Does anybody die if we don't do that? Well, no. Okay. Will anybody be seriously injured if we don't do that? Well, no, it's not critical. It's important. Doesn't mean it's critical. So, I've worked for organizations that it was critical. I worked for the, DPS. We had people on the side, troopers on the side of the road that if they didn't have the information, they could be pulling over a wanted felon and they didn't know it. That was critical. When I was at DMV, we licensed long haul oversized overweight trucks. If those people were not on the right road, people died. And we had a number of incidents while I was there where someone went off route or did what we call run hot. They did not pull a permit with a route, and they just went down the road and ended up running somebody off the road or hitting a bridge. That happened just north of Austin. They hit a bridge or a bridge under construction, knocked a big piece of concrete off and killed 3 or 4 people. People die if that system's not working. That's critical. But getting that context for people, because they go, oh my God, we have all this confidential information. Okay, yeah, but you've got to look at the grand scheme of things. How much money is that worth? Well, if it's compromised, we get fined. Okay, how much is the fine? You always have to look at it in business context. Security is not black and white. I say this all the time. Security is 1,000 shades of gray, and it's all about risk, and it's about understanding. You can take a lot of risk as long as you understand this is the risk you're taking. I tell my executives all the time, there are going to be very few instances in which I give you a hard no. The hard no I give you is that's illegal. You can't do it.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I'm going to tell you the worst possible scenario, and then I'm going to tell you how likely it is, or not likely it is to happen, and you get to make a decision about whether you're willing to take that risk. That's how I sleep good at night. People ask, "How do you sleep good at night?" I give good advice, and then I recognized a long time ago for 90% of the security decisions, I am not the decision maker. I am the advisor. There's a few things where it's like, oh yeah, that's routine. I can improve that. But most stuff, I'm not the decision maker. I tell the executives what it could be and how likely it is to happen and what's the consequence. I talk about the difference between accountability and responsibility. It says, I have the responsibility of managing your security program. However, I do not have the accountability for things that go wrong. The executive does. In state government, that's laid out very clearly. We have a statute and rule that says the agency head is ultimately responsible for the security of the organization. So you cannot delegate that accountability. You can delegate the responsibility for running the program. You cannot delegate away the accountability. And that makes executives want to be involved because, well, if I'm accountable for it, my job's on the line. I might want to make sure that things are being done the way they're supposed to. That's the key, is making sure you're providing enough information to your executives so they can make a good informed risk decision.
I love that perspective of your job, and quite frankly, everybody has the same responsibilities to be a communicator. I have a certain perspective. I have an understanding. In your role, you've got a whole organization of people of understandings to then translate up above you. They have goals that you then have to understand and translate back down. Really, the people at the very top of the org, the people at the very bottom of the org are the only ones that aren't translating up or down or even side to side in a lot of ways. So I love that mindset of I'm here to help above me and below me to understand what below me and above me are trying to say. What is the risk tolerance coming from above? What are the chances of risk coming up from the bottom? And then putting it all in the context of risk. Like everything is in balance. Everything is a trade-off.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of started off with, we're not a security company, so being secure isn't the number one thing by itself. It is a goal to achieve, but we need to make sure the business can do what it needs to do. And having that mindset as an executive yourself to be able to say, I need to understand what they need to accomplish, what's most important, and then balance that with, like you said, that scale of, is somebody going to die? Is it illegal? All the way down to, we're going to get a $100 fine. If it means saving somebody's life, we'll take a $100 hit. That's fine. So you did talk a lot about kind of talking to executives and understanding the business level of stuff. Would love to hear your thoughts as well as how you focus down and being the leader of an organization. How do you look at building the team to accomplish those goals? And what do you look for in those people, and how they can most effectively communicate to you those types of risks and things that you need to translate?
Absolutely. So the first thing, and I start this in all my discussions about staffing, is I look for diversity of thought and experience. People talk about diversity and they think I'm looking for, a ratio, right? I have so many percent of this race and so many percent of that race. I'm looking for experience and skills and desire. Traditionally in cybersecurity, you came up through three paths. Either you were a network guy, server person, or a help desk, the desktop. And one of those, maybe you'd have somebody cross over from application development, but usually it was one of those three. Well, if I came up through networking and I bring in 4 other people that all came up through networking, we're all concentrating on network perimeter security. We're not concentrating on anything else because we don't think about it. So having that diversity of experience, diversity of knowledge, now we have a lot more opportunity to get security people who started in security. I mean, 10 years ago, there were no cybersecurity degrees. Now there are several institutes of higher education that have whole programs built out around information assurance or information security, cybersecurity, whatever they call it, their different program. And you can get an actual degree and come right out of college with a well-rounded knowledge of a lot of different things. And so that's really neat to get those different backgrounds and be able to have people that think and process information differently. I'm a big proponent of using Myers-Briggs for decision-making understanding. So understand how you and other people make decisions, and not having your whole team in the same, it's very comfortable if I'm an ESTJ and everybody in my team's an ESTJ, but that means that we have groupthink, and I want difference of opinion. I want somebody to argue with me. Now that's the E in me. I like to talk about a decision before I make it, which also makes me very pragmatic. I'm open to hearing from other people before I make my decision. And so that I think that has helped me as a leader, is being open to listening to what my people say, but then also having the understanding and setting the expectation with my staff that, hey, when it comes down to it, I'm the decision maker. So we'll talk about it, and I may take in several opinions, but when I make the decision, that's what we're doing. And so that it kind of sets the time limit to, we're going to make this decision. We're not going to try to relitigate it every week. Once we choose a direction, we're going to go in that direction. So I try to set that tone with the staff. And I'm very open to the input, but once we go, we go. Let's not get ourselves stuck in a spiral. But building that trust with the team, the trust that you can disagree with me, and I'm not going to hold it against you. You can bring a different perspective, and nobody's going to say, "Well, that's stupid." That we're open to being communicative with each other about having a different idea. Some of the best innovations come out of a different idea, and it may not be directly related to that particular decision you were trying to get to. It may be tangential to that, but when we're talking about that perimeter security thing, that kind of applies to this email stuff. Let's talk about, maybe we can use that in a different way. And so having that openness to the different ideas really helps, progress your program past just what you think. I cannot run a program by myself. I can establish a framework. I can, hire people, but, really it's about making sure that you have enough good other thought processes so that you're not blind to the things you're not in tune to.
Yeah, I loved what you said, that you were saying like diversity of thought and making sure that you're bringing in professionals of different backgrounds, skill sets, training, to making sure that your program is more well-rounded, to making sure that you don't really have like single points of failure where you're like, oh, we haven't thought about it because it's not part of our background, as opposed to making sure you have a wider skill set with the team that you bring on. What struck me when you and I met was your emphasis and importance on mentorship. And I've been fortunate to have mentors, but I haven't necessarily worked with organizations with large mentorships programs. And I'm not sure that that's the case. I think where you're at, I think you just have an affinity for being a mentor. So I'm not sure if those are more formalized programs or just a passion that you have. But I would love to just hear some of your advice for other technology leaders who are hoping to be effective mentors for their colleagues, for peers, individuals that reach out to them. What are some of the tips you would give to them to being like a strategic and helpful mentor?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of levels to that. So you talk about a formal mentorship program. I'm trying to make one. So we started the CISO mentorship program. There's myself and two other CISOs in the state that put together a program for state employees that are either senior level cybersecurity analysts or junior information security officers who felt like they kind of got voluntold into their position and don't have the experience. And it started out from a happy hour when I had a couple of senior analysts asking me about, legislative budget process or something. And I was going on for 10 or 15 minutes, and they stopped and said, "How do you know this?" I said, "Well, a couple of things. One, I've been with the state for 22 years. And they went, "Well, how do we learn this without being at the state for 22 years? So, I said, "That's a good question." The other part of that answer was that my dad was with the state for 43 years. And so I learned this stuff at the dinner table as a teenager. So I had the advantage of a built-in mentor, and uh, he was also very focused on mentorship. In fact, he got the Robert Martinez Mentorship Award several years before he passed, and that was his most coveted award that he had got. And so here on the later half of my cybersecurity career with the state, I've been thinking about legacy and passing on that information. And one of the things I've learned along the way, as far as take care, you got to take care of your people because they'll take care of you. So that's the internal mentorship, right? The succession planning and mentoring your staff inside your organization to make sure that you've got a deep bench to pick up, because we're not here forever. We move on. We go to other adventures, and we want to make sure that our organization survives our leaving. The other thing is, remember how hard it was as you were coming up, and think, did someone extend help to you? Think about that and pay it forward. Extend that help to other folks. If you struggled the whole way, think about how hard that was and how much better it would be if you had somebody who had extended you help, and pay it forward. Um, the other thing is, I see this sometimes, and it's a little cringy for me. I see some people self promoting on I'm such a great mentor to these people. It's not about you. The
Yes.
greatest success for a mentor is that his mentee achieves success. I'm extraordinarily excited that one of our mentees from our current CISO mentorship program uh, has been accepted as the CISO for another state agency. So he was a senior analyst, and now he's going to be the CISO himself. And I see that as a huge success, and it makes me extraordinarily proud that one of our mentees has achieved that success.
Yeah, I love that. It's been important to my career, and I try to help out people where I can. Similar to me, who have never been in a formal program, but I have formally asked people in the past, "Hey, I've never been in this type of role before, this type of company before. Can you be a mentor to me? Can you help me to find my way through this, learn to be better, to be able to progress where I'm at?" When you're in a startup, when you're in a small company, you've got to look for those people and have that conversation with those people you think can help bring you up. Not always the easiest thing to ask for, not always the easiest thing to get, but yeah, I would echo everything you said about that.
Yeah. So Josh, to give a little bit of cohesivity between some of the professionals that we're chatting with, I had a CTO that I spoke with a couple months ago now, that we were talking about the fight for privacy versus the fight for security. And their argument was basically that the fight for privacy is dead, and that now that it's the fight for security. I would love to just get your perspective on that. Do you think the fight for privacy is dead? Do you think there's still a valuable fight in the fight for privacy, or is it a little bit of both?
I think the issue with the fight for privacy is that it's not well defined. It's a moving target, that different regulations, and it's also quite subjective. Certain, well, this should be private versus, well, is it? Everybody knows it. Does it really count as private? I would agree to some extent that the fight for security is more tangible. It is something that you can look across. There's frameworks. There's all these controls, regulations, standards, guidelines, and you have a target to go for. Privacy is this concept that what is essential to me, it belongs to me, and no one else can have it. I think the biggest detractor to that is the fact that so many people openly give away their privacy. You click on the EULA for every app without reading it, and don't recognize the fact that you just gave away your data. That I tell people this all the time. If the application is free, you are the cost. Which means when you said yes, you gave up the ability to tell them that they can't collect data on you. Whether it's your personal data, your buying habits, your surfing habits, whatever, there's some data that they want, and you gave them permission to collect it when they gave you this thing to do for free. So
Yeah.
that's kind of I would say that it's really it's not that privacy is dead, it means something different to so many people. It's not an easy thing to pinpoint. Whereas security, you can say, oh, well, we adhere to this set of controls or this standard or this regulation. It's PCI DSS or NIST 853 or whatever it is. There's something that you can put parameters around, and it's a target that you can actually go for. Where privacy is this concept. If you're in Europe, you've got GDPR, and it means, that's what privacy means. But if you're, in the US, privacy is different, and it's not the same everywhere, and it's very difficult to say this is privacy.
Yeah, actually, the fight for privacy is also different where you ask, not only who you ask, but also where you are and what, yeah. I love that answer. I think I can totally understand as somebody who's built out information security programs such as yourself. I also am somebody who loves guardrails and standards and a pretty bright line rule of, is this secure, yes or no? So I can totally understand where you fall on that particular question. Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining us and talking about your background and giving us some really thoughtful insights on what it means to be a CISO or a CISO. Brian and I were talking about the difference of how to say it, but being a Chief Information Security Officer. So thank you so much for the time and joining us here on Socializing Security.
Absolutely.
So, Josh, if people want to contact you, any parting thoughts, why don't you share it with the audience?
So, if you want to connect with me, LinkedIn is going to be your best bet for that. I will say that always be looking for ways to be the go-to rather than the run from. That's the key thing that's helped. And then share the knowledge. You can't take it with you, and it really it has value when you help someone else.
Josh, thank you again for joining us, and thanks for everybody for socializing security with us.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you.
Well, that was an awesome conversation with Josh Milu. I really enjoyed that conversation. I'm glad that you were able to meet him and he was willing, and based on kind of after conversation with him, he was quite excited to talk with us too. So I think that definitely came through. But as we were socializing with him, what did you learn?
Yeah, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have Josh Kuntz come speak with us here at Socializing Security. I think it was an awesome conversation. I think for me, what struck out to me was just his mindset of being a very strategic leader and making sure that it didn't seem like he ever struggled with buy-in, because it seems like he knew who to talk to at the highest level to making sure that he was advocating for the security programs. And again, it definitely does help too, right? If the ultimate responsibility also falls on the agency itself to making sure that the system is secure, that definitely helps. But I think hearing his mindset of what types of talent he was building out, as well as what types of programs he was thinking through, especially with how much change he's had, it's pretty impressive, like different agencies and coming up with different strategies for each, as well as the entire industry is changing. I think it was super refreshing to just hear his mindset, but what a positive person, just like lovely to listen to.
Yeah. That was a big part of my takeaway as well, is that I want to go work for him now, to be quite honest. He's saying a lot of the things that I recognize in the leaders that I've always enjoyed working with. So give everybody a voice, let everybody make their pitch, set a timeline to it. We can't paralyze ourselves with discussion about it. And then the final decision is mine. I'll make it and we'll go forward with it. Being very cognizant of, who's responsible and who's going to end up holding the bag in the end. And, looking at his role as not the ultimate decision maker, but to be an advisor there. I think I kind of highlighted this during the conversation, but that everybody is a communicator. Like he sees his role as translating, from business speak to security speak. And that's, to me, I think that's a big part of the CISO role. So it was really cool to hear him say that in much more elegant ways than I could ever say it.
Yeah. Plus it was awesome to hear all of his initiatives in terms of mentorship and getting more involved. It was really cool to hear that the state CISOs have gotten together and have built out a mentorship program to help bring up the next group of candidates for those roles, especially even better that they're trying to hire internally from the existing programs. So that was really cool. And it was also awesome to hear just his focus on knowledge transfer and making sure that it's not doesn't just live in his head.
Yeah. I liked that kind of focus on legacy, and so many people I've seen in roles like his at every level. When you're on the customer side, they try to defend their role, like they view their position as theirs for as long as they want it, and don't really care what happens after I'm gone. I don't want anybody threatening me, so I don't focus on training people. But he very well said in the fact that I'm building a legacy. That legacy is going to live beyond me. I want whoever takes over after me to be able to slide right into it and continue that legacy. And that's a big part of what he views mentorship as, is trying to essentially to build up your replacement, because at some point you're not going to be there, whether through promotion, whether through retirement, whether through worst case scenarios. Having somebody that is going to take what you've done so far and continue on with it. I never reflected on that in my career and in mentorships that I've done, but to show those people how I do my job so they can do it for me someday when I'm not there. And watching them thrive when I leave the organization, they fill that void, does bring a lot of joy. So that was an insight I had never even thought about for myself. So I love that introspection I was able to do there.
Honestly, I just am grateful that we're having people come join us and give their thought leadership on this platform. I think I'm super grateful that I got to meet Josh at a Tech Allies event in Austin and learn from him. And honestly, we spoke probably for an hour just at that event, just one-on-one. And so being able to bring him on here and learn from him again, I think was awesome. And I'm looking forward to future conversations that we're having with other technology professionals here.
Cool. Yeah. And like we talked about with Josh is, we're looking for people at all levels. So if you're interested in being on with us, if you got some good stories to share, we'd love to hear from you. So we're trying to build a community. We're trying to help people socialize with one another and show that there's a lot of great people. There's a lot of great ways to do security. So I guess with that, we'll wrap up this episode. And again, appreciate everybody so much for listening in, and we hope that you'll contribute back and continue listening.
Mm-hmm.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Socializing Security. We hope you learned a thing or two with us.
If you'd like to continue socializing with us on this topic or have feedback, we'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn or social media. Just search for Socializing Security. Or you can email us at info@socializingsecurity.com.
Until next time, stay social and stay secure.